Hey, it's Jordan. Delighted to be joined by Steve Grumbine, real progressives, and a wizard on modern monetary theory, economics, and fact versus fiction as far as progressive economics. We've spoken before. Just for people that might be tuning in for the first time, might not know modern monetary theory, give us a brief description of MMT. And also, frankly, I don't hear any of the candidates really using it in its true essence.
Well, so first things first, thank you for letting me join you again, Jordan. I love being with you here, bro. Modern monetary theory is just a description of the way the system is today. It really describes currency wherever it is all around the world. But more importantly, though, it is like a scalpel through the neoliberal lies that we've been force fed for a generation, both at the federal level, and it teaches us the difference between states and local currencies. And at the end of the day, it describes the way our system works from 1971 to present, when we left the gold standard, to when we left the Bretton Woods Accord. And you see clearly right now, everyone talks as if we're still on the gold standard. Everything that they talk about is based on this concept of national debt, without understanding that we are the creditors in general. We are the ones that create the money. So, at the end of the day, you're like, what debt? So ultimately, MMT is a description, a lens by which we can understand the economy. It doesn't need to be implemented. You hear a lot of people talk about, well, if we implement, no, it's already there. And really the reason why you don't hear candidates talking about it is, number one, a lot of them don't fully understand it. Number two, could be political suicide, because you see the resistance. A lot of people that just have zero understanding of economics bring to the table. They hear something that doesn't sound like what they've been hearing for the last 20 years. Their radar goes up. They can't believe it. They reject it on sight. So I think that the candidates are up against a buzzsaw of a public that is, quite frankly, not really tuned into economics. They think of the federal government as their own household budget. And, at the end of the day, MMT dispels that myth. It shows that the currency issuer can never go broke. And that's ultimately what MMT allows us to see.
And the way I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, is it's not like taxpayer money has fully covered the endless war we've engaged in. It's not like there's enough taxpayer money going around to pay for all the 1,000 military bases around the world, pay for the wars in Iraq, Afghanistan, the droning, all of this. The government's printing the money, so the government has the money. It's just what the government chooses to spend the money on.
So think of it like this. Every time the government signs a bill into law, it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter whether it's something sexy that we love or something disgusting that we hate. Every time the government signs something into law, it authorizes new spending. And that new spending is new dollars. We don't reuse tax dollars. Taxes are simply the carrot and the stick to drive us to require that currency. It shows us that the currency that the government issues is the only thing we can pay our taxes in. So therefore, it's what creates a circuit. It forces us to have the currency to pay the tax, and the government guarantees that it will take your money to pay the tax. And so that's the circuit that MMT demonstrates clearly. The taxes literally do not pay for any spending whatsoever. So the idea of we're going to pay for X program or Y program by raising taxes, that's one of the other things that MMT clearly dispels. It's not really rocket science after you figure it out. To your point, these bombs that are going off all over the place didn't get funded by taxpayer dollars. We just saw a huge $750 billion increase to the military budget, while simultaneously slashing taxes as well. So it doesn't take a genius to start seeing the ruse that has been pulled over on us, but it does take an open mind to say, wait a minute, maybe that's what wasn't clicking all these years.
Right. So yeah, we're gonna get to Andrew Yang. Don't you worry about that. But let's talk Bernie and Tulsi then, because even though, for example, Tulsi, even though in the spirit of what she's saying, it's very, very credible and important, ending these wars. The way she's saying it is, we're spending all this money over there that could be spent over here on domestic programs. But in reality, it's not really an either or, because we're not foregoing domestic programs to pay for the foreign programs.
That's exactly right. I think that is a huge deal too, that we all need to really understand, because if we don't understand that, then what ends up happening is we create what I call a false scarcity narrative. We create a narrative where we literally think somehow or another we can't save lives today and give them health care. We can't pay off student debt. We can't do these things because somehow or another we got to offset it or finance it through cuts to the military. And that's become a folklore on the left that has actually hurt us more than just about anything the right wing could do to us. Our own self-imposed prison of not realizing how it works really does cripple us quite terribly, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So Tulsi, let me just be clear. Tulsi does not understand MMT. We're not talking about like she's just saying things because politically it's not, good. She genuinely doesn't understand it. And quite frankly, she is on the UBI side with all Andrew and her own right. So there's a lot of really, we all love her. She stood up for Bernie, and she's got all these great anti-war stances. But in reality, her position on a great many things is quite troubling, because it lends itself to right-wing thinking when it comes to the economic model that she's proposing. And, that may hurt people's feelings to hear that, but we're never going to make progress if we can't call out our heroes and say, hey, you're wrong. This is not how it works. Mm-hmm. And you could say the same for Bernie, but Bernie, the difference between the two of them, it couldn't be more stark. You see Bernie's visions are so much broader, so much faster, so much more visionary. And the reason for that is because he knows, with Kelton in his background, he knows the full scope and the full power of the purse, and he understands what we can do. So that's why, to me, it's not even there's no contest. Bernie hands down. But when you see this, you have to scratch your head, because the average Tulsi voter, the average Bernie voter, they don't understand this. They're still wondering why their checks are bouncing in their own day-to-day lives. So spending all this huge amount of money is very difficult to get their head wrapped around.
And I think Bernie, the difference between Bernie and Tulsi, it's not to knock Tulsi, but I think Bernie gets that the debt thing is a lot to do about nothing. But yes, he knows that in the time he has to, because he does have to pick off some of the establishment vote to win the nomination and win the general election. I think he looks at it more as, I'm not going to pick this fight because they, the old school Democratic voter who's basically conservative, they still believe in, we got to look at the debt and worry about the debt. And Bernie, I think, also talks more in terms of not that we need to cut the military budget to pay for programs here, but we need to prioritize programs here.
You'll notice a very subtle language changes between the two of them. Bernie oftentimes will couch things like, we can't balance the budget on the backs of the poor. Well, we're not going to balance the budget, period, okay? But the point is, we're not going to balance it on the poor. So, no, you don't get to screw over the poor to get your balanced fiscal sustainability, whatever. And he uses a lot of coded language. And for us MMTers, it's like, okay, it's painful because we know who he's accommodating. It isn't us. We'd love him to say, yeah, absolutely, the sky's the limit. He basically has done that. Look, he came out and offered up getting rid of medical debt. He came. They're even talking about housing debt. They're talking about getting rid of all debt. They're really, if you watch and you're paying attention, they're driving toward a debt jubilee. And this is an incredibly big deal because folks like Steve Keen, who are for the monetary circuit theory, and some others of the larger group like Michael Hudson and some of the other outliers, they're all really pushing for outing and getting rid of private debt, because private debt is strangling all of our lives. It's strangling the economy too. So I think that's what you're seeing here, and it's pretty masterful when you think about the fact that most people really don't get this. So he puts just enough of what they understand into it, and then says, "Wow, we're going to do these great things." You're like, "Where's all the tax money coming from to do all this nonsense?" It doesn't add up. He's not saying tax dollars. He's talking straight up deficit spending. So,
and just to put a bow on MMT before we get to Yang, and honestly, I think Yang's programs are a little dangerous, and a lot of people don't understand them. So you have these right wingers now running against Trump. I think Mark Sanford and Joe Walsh, who was a birther and all these things, and they're very focused on the debt has exploded under Trump. In addition to Trump being a lunatic, and the Democrats are using this messaging: the deficit has exploded, this and that. For people that might be open to MMT but have been indoctrinated with debts and deficits, debt and deficits, why does debt not actually matter as far as modern monetary theory?
Well, you got to know what debt is, right? So all money in a fiat system is debt. What it is the dollar itself is used. It's a tax credit. That's the shortcut to it. It's a tax credit. So when you issue these dollars, what the government is saying is we'll accept $1 for $1 in tax payment. And that's your guarantee that that dollar has quote unquote value. And so when you're looking at this, it's debt because it's a government obligation that they will receive that as payment in tax. All this stuff about interest-bearing accounts and bonds and stuff like that, we make this stuff in keystrokes. It's got nothing to do with nothing. We want to defend a positive interest rate. We want to keep interest rates at 3%. So they sell bonds or whatever to slow down the economy or speed up an economy. It depends on, it's like a brake and a gas pedal in the economy and nothing more. The debt is the sum total of every untaxed dollar in existence today. I mean, it's that simple. And it cracks me up because I was once a Ron Paul guy and an end the Fed guy and every other lunatic fringe idea that the left, and I'm a part of that community, has peddled out there. It's that combination of the right wing and the left wing meeting in the middle and coming up with all kinds of fairy tales. And I think that this particular one, the debt in particular, is probably the most brutal of them all because it is the ultimate austerity. It brings about the very nature of, well, we got to reduce spending. We got to eat our peas. We got to do something awful to ourselves to bring some false fiscal responsibility to the table. And I think that has been used to great success. And it's a very political game because you realize when the Republicans are in there, they don't mind exploding the deficit. And then the Democrats are like, deficit, deficit, deficit. And then to flip it around. And then now the Democrats want to spend some money on, Medicare or whatever. And the Republicans are like, deficit, deficit, deficit. And the Democrats have said, screw this, let's just not play this game anymore. Let's just go ahead and be fiscal conservatives ourselves and screw ourselves out of any meaningful change whatsoever. So, the whole thing's a big old farce, and the national debt is absolutely nothing more than the sum total of every untaxed dollar in existence, nothing more.
Hope you enjoyed that last video. Hop on over to statuscoup.com where you can sign up for our email list and become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. Membership is how we grow. That's statuscoup.com/join. And remember, join our email list so we can grow the revolution with you.